Josh Bishop here, back with Shreyas Lotta. Another episode from the guys, from the boys.
We have
Adam Amin today. Okay, if you don't know who that is, then you're probably lying to yourself. He is the youngest ever play-by-play broadcaster at ESPN at the age of 24. I'm 22, and all I've done this week is save Gotham on my PlayStation.
Hey,
okay.
What is a podcast? Don't forget that.
Okay, yes, but anyways, youngest play-by-play broadcaster ever at the age of 24. He's a two-time college sports broadcaster of the year and a finalist for the Jim Nantz Award. So if you can't tell, we're excited to have him on the pod. Pretty crazy. Shout out to my man Shreyas. This man is shameless, and he will slide into anybody's DMs or anybody's comments to get these interviews.
I just want to say, Josh, it's like I pull up from Curry range, half court. Just don't tell me it's for charity, like, because you know how when you tell it's for charity for Curry, he seems to miss a lot more than he makes. But the same thing, I have no shame. You know, I mean, like, look at the guest list we've had on, guys. I mean, like, Ernie Johnson, Soap Undead, Neil Payne, Kelsey Russo, like all these people that we've got on now. Adam Amin, like, big time get. These guys have been so generous of taking their time to come on our podcast, give their insight. It's fantastic content. Like, I think you guys will love this interview. I think it's going to be our best podcast yet, honestly.
I'm not one for hyperbole, and I tend to be the negative of the two. And I think this was our best podcast. So if I'm saying that, it might actually be. Shreyas, on the other hand, he thinks everything's the next best, greatest thing that's ever happened.
Chill. You just got to have that mentality, Josh. I got to pull it from Curry range. That's the only way we're going to get jobs in the NBA.
Somebody's got to keep us connected to Earth a little bit.
You're right. Quentin's out here telling us the middle ground. He's the Earth to the fire and water that we are.
Well, we hope you guys enjoy it, and we can't wait for you guys to listen. Let us know. Subscribe if you like the podcast. Like, retweet, whatever, and let us know what you think. All right, so today Josh Bishop here with Shreyas Lotta. We have a very special guest, Adam Amin, the youngest ever play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN at the age of 24. Kind of shocking that we got him on, but you know that's kind of a good thing out of this is he has time to give and he was willing to give it, so we really appreciate it. But just to let you kind of know, Adam, how this started, I was looking for opportunities to improve my broadcasting skills. I'm big on the NBA. It's the thing I know best. And the only other guy in Grady Sports who was really as into the NBA as me is Shreyas. So I took him to IHOP one Sunday afternoon, and I said, "You want to do a podcast?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah." And I was like, "You want to do a podcast with me?" And honestly, since then, I don't think I've matched his enthusiasm. He was so excited. IHOP is even in our bio for the podcast, but we're super excited to have you, and that's just kind of how we got started. So maybe if you would kind of tell us how you got started.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a job until really I was maybe 17 or 18. I know a lot of guys who do this job. A lot of people that are friends of mine knew they wanted to do this a lot earlier. They wanted to do this when they were 6 or 7 years old, which is awesome. Like that's so cool that you knew that. I didn't know that this was like a real career that you could have. So I messed around with it a little bit in high school, did like the public access football games my senior year. Wasn't really doing them wasn't really calling them in earnest. I was just kind of messing around, and it was a good excuse to talk about my buddies that were on the team and have friends of mine come on the air, and like a lot like what people do now. Like this is a good excuse to like converse, whether it's podcasts, whether it's stuff like this, like it's a good excuse to just, converse about a certain topic. So that was kind of what we were doing. I had a friend of mine who was a few years ahead of me in school from my hometown, who was going to Valparaiso University in Indiana. And he said, "Hey, I'm doing broadcasting here. I know you've messed around with it a little bit. If you want to try it, like come here. I'm going to be the GM of the radio station next year. I'll put you on the air. Like, come on out." So I applied. I got in. I did not visit. The first time I went to campus was for orientation. Like I was already a student. I had never been to campus before.
Wow.
So I was just like, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So like, I assure you that it's not the end of the world if you're not fully like locked down on what you want to do by the time, you know, you're 17 or 18. It's all good. So once I got in, I showed up, I went straight to the radio station. I'm like, I ran into the advisor, who's now a good friend of mine, and said, my buddy Ken told me to come here. What am I supposed to do? And he walked me through the radio station, and I went every day I was on campus pretty much after that. If I was on campus, I was going to the radio station more often than not, at least once a day to do something. Producing, getting ready for broadcast, hosting, doing the update anchor stuff, working on stories, whatever. So that's how I got started. It didn't really start until I got to college, and that's when I realized, like, oh, maybe I could actually do this for a living someday.
Man, just the way that you describe all the different things you did at Valparaiso, it makes me wonder, like, if that's even possible at UGA. I feel like UGA is a bunch of people that like all want to do it at the same time. So
Sure,
we get like an hour at a time, but it's like you were able to do all these different things. How did you have the, push and drive to do that when you weren't even sure you wanted to do this yet?
I was kind of unsure, just in general, admittedly. I didn't know what I really wanted to focus on. I didn't know if I wanted to go into my senior year of high school was like, I was so confused. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I enjoyed it, but I was kind of like, well, what's the next year going to hold? I was like I was a good student. I was an okay athlete. I was a really talented musician, all state.
Mm-hmm.
I focused a lot on that stuff, and I loved it. So I had all these things that I felt like I was really good at, but nothing that I was really great at. And once I got to college and found that I had some ability for this, I was a theater kid, for a good chunk of my high school career. So this was performance and sports all kind of combined into one thing. And it was something that I happened to really enjoy. And that's the only reason I kind of stuck with it, because it was the only thing that I really felt super confident about, that I knew I wanted to do. And I think that passion has to carry you, for a long time. You can do this job without passion. You can, and you can actually do it probably okay. I don't think you can be really great at this job without a certain level of passion for it. And I think that passion carried me through my early years of doing it, and in college, and then the first couple of years out of school, when you're kind of grinding through a job and you're in a small town, or you're probably pretty far away from home, and you're kind of trying to figure out what the next steps are. That passion is very important, because it carries you through a lot of lower times in this business.
When you said that you felt like you were good at a lot of things, but you didn't know what you were great at, I've said that to my mom. I don't know how many times. I was a pretty good basketball player. I was a pretty good drummer. I got good grades. And when I went to college, the only reason I switched to this was because UGA has a great program for sports media. And it's like you said, that passion has to be there, because there are days I'm thinking, we make this podcast for free. Is this ever going to go anywhere?
Right.
And what advice would you give to kids like me, like Shreyas, like yourself, who, we're in a pandemic right now. This may not go anywhere for a while. How do you push through this time and believe in yourself and bet on yourself?
Well, here's, and this, I don't know if this is correct. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I kind of think. This is what I would tell myself if I were in the same situation. And I will say, about 10 years ago, when I was out of school and in the job market looking for something, we were right during the middle of a recession, which is kind of what we're in now. It may get worse than that, we'll see, but we were in the middle of a recession. Economy was down. Jobs were good jobs were fairly scarce, it felt like. Certainly good paying jobs out of school. Not that this was a business that you'd ever really expect to get paid in that much anyway when you're first starting out. So I don't tell anybody to expect that by any means. But I think having the idea and having the concept in your head that this is more of a marathon than a sprint, that, this is I know it's not really a blip. It doesn't feel like a blip right now because it's so, it's so impactful on every aspect of our lives right now. But it's a blip in the radar of the grand scheme of what's going to happen. And hopefully this is a speed bump for you en route to a very hopefully long career, doing something that you enjoy doing, whether it's in this business, in the periphery of, or something else entirely. So I think that's key to remember. Easy for me to say. I understand that. I've been doing this for a while. I've established myself a little bit in this business to where I feel like, okay, whenever it picks up again, at some point somewhere, I'll be okay and I'll have a position hopefully. But I think that same advice goes for you guys. For guys like you, for anybody around your age, women and men who believe they were on track to do something in this business, and all of a sudden have everything derailed. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Hopefully everybody can kind of work through this. I know that's, that differs, the level of difficulty with that. But I think that's what I would tell anybody right around, 21 to from the age of 21 to the age of 25 or 26.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I told you a little bit before, growing up South Asian, how much, pressure did you feel from your parents coming out of college about this career? Like, were you getting pressure to kind of do something else? Because, with my parents, until I got this like ESPN internship, I was a marketing major and I still am. And it was like, I did everything sports related on the side, whether it was writing or podcasting or scouting stuff. Yeah. And then when they got it, they finally understood how much it means. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, my mom did until the first time I did a game for ESPN. The first time that she turned on her TV with my dad to watch a game on national TV that I was calling, it wasn't until then where she was like, oh, so this is what he's doing. And even then, I think it took a little while for her to get used to that idea. She had told friends of hers. I'll tell you guys this story. So I was in my first full-time job out of school in Iowa, and small town, running a radio station, sports department for a couple radio stations. I went home for a week during Christmas break or whatever, holiday break. My mom says, "Hey, Dad's sick. Can you take me to this wedding that he was supposed to take me to?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. I'm not doing anything. It's all good." So we go to this banquet hall. We're about to walk in, and right before we step in, my mom stops me and says, "All right, just so you know, I may or may not have told like a good chunk of my friends that you were going to med school." And that's a very, it feels like, and maybe it's not, and that's okay if it's not, but it feels like, especially to Shreyas and me, that is a very culturally specific thing.
Oh, it is. Trust me.
That is a very culturally specific thing that happens. And it was basically like she didn't know she couldn't conceptualize how to describe what I did at that point for a living. I was 2 months maybe into this radio job. I'm a sports director. I co-hosted the morning show from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I did the 10 a.m. sportscast, the noon sportscast, the 5 p.m. sportscast, and then at 7 o'clock, 6:30, I was doing the girls' basketball game, and then at 8, I was doing the boys' game, and then I was driving home afterwards and going to bed and waking up at 4:30 the next morning and doing it all over. Like, that was the job.
Wow.
That took a while to describe. So now imagine my mother having to try to figure out how to explain that to another set of women of her cultural and ethnic and religious background that have certain expectations for what you're supposed to be like at age 22, 23, 24 as a college. If you're a college graduate, this is what the path is, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer, anything along those lines. That's where the focus is. So it took a while for her to get there, to kind of come around to the idea that, oh, my son does this. This is my son's job. And for her it was a little tough, and I had to win her over in a lot of ways. And I know she loves me or whatever. It's not about that. It's just she had a certain level of skepticism for it.
Mm-hmm.
My brother's same deal, because I was the smart kid. I was the smart kid. I was the athlete. I was like the good kid. What do you do? You should be doing something better than this. You're a 4.0 student. You should be spending your college years focused on something better that's going to make you money right out of the gate. And that's what their focus was on. And that's a little bit of a cultural assimilation thing. As part of being able to assimilate is to be a success. That what better story is it in America than the immigrant success story?
Yeah.
But a lot of immigrants have to get that level of success that they look at from when they come from a different culture. They kind of look. All they have to gauge it by is money. Do you have are you financially stable? So when you have good grades and all this, why wouldn't you push yourself towards those things that are just financially stable? And that's spread across a lot of different cultures.
Yeah.
Obviously, like that's not specific to us. That's specific to all of us that are on this call right now. But in that same vein, when that's all you have to gauge it by, the arts, like that seems like such a far away thing. Like it's a completely different world. So arts, entertainment, media, that wasn't really our thing. And it took them a little while to my brothers to come around to that. My dad was very supportive, and his only advice was just don't half-ass it. If you're gonna do it, do it. Like I support it. Like you're gonna be great. He was very encouraging. Like you're gonna be great at whatever you do, as long as you don't half-ass it. And that was the advice that stuck with me the most. And that's certainly something that I look back on now and think, all right, I don't think I half-assed it. I think that was a big reason why I got to where I got to early, and where I've been able to stay, and just stay consistent. I feel like I put in the work to try to be as consistent as possible.
That, it's funny because you say that, I have the same story coming out of high school. My mom sat me down and she was like, so like, what is your degree going to be? She's like, you can't do medical. Have you seen your honors biology grades? I was like, yeah. And I was like, I guess between like the 3 choices of medical, engineering, and like business, I'll do it. And I did a lot of business course. Like I did all these business courses I hated, like a good 80% of them. Like the marketing stuff was okay, so I picked that as a major. But even then, my parents were pushing, finance is a little more financially stable. There's a lot of job openings. Go after it. But I always kind of loved sports. And like my sophomore year of college, it was like I was really going after it. And I remember I went and coached basketball at this camp for like $4.50 an hour, like no money at all, like just in the middle of nowhere in Maryland. And I came back and somebody was like, what did you do this summer? And I was like, oh, I was just out coaching basketball. He's like, you got paid for that? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, well, my daughter is like shadowing Sanjay Gupta, I felt like, from CNN. So I was like, okay, like it pissed me off then. And like the whole mindset of, my parents knew that I loved sports and they knew I started writing about sports and stuff like that. But until like I really pushed for it, and then like, it's the first interview with ESPN, my parents sat me down, they're like, we get it. Like we understand why. It took me 9 tries to get the actual internship, but like after that, they were like on board 100%. And now my mom's become the biggest supporter in the sense that like she's like, you picked the path that you picked because it's unconventional, and you're gonna have to live with the choices, but you're doing something you love, so that's the sacrifice.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I would say too that that's fairly universal, that advice. Like obviously, like not to half-ass stuff, to kind of be full bore about it. But I think you do need at least some kind of a blueprint for whatever portion of thinking that you're coming from, whatever prism you're thinking in. You almost need a blueprint for that. So if it's a cultural background thing, I actually had a conversation about this with a lot of the other brown dudes that work at ESPN, for lack of a better term. It was cool. We had like a Zoom call, together, 6 of us, the other day, and Kevin Nagandi was on the call, and he was talking about just being not really having anybody who looked like him do the job that he was doing. So it was very important to him, and it's very important to him now, and it has been for a long time, to be like a good leader in that regard. And Kevin also gave a lot of credit to Dari Noka, who happened to be on the call as well, works for the SEC network now full time. Same deal, right? Like, he was probably the first guy who kind of looked like that to be on that platform, and you need to see it like a little bit, And again, I'm not trying to exclude you guys in this either, because like I said, this is fairly universal just in terms of wherever you're coming from. You see guys out of the University of Georgia, the Maria Taylors of the world, doing what she's doing, David Pollock, like people who come out of your university go on and have done good things. Like that only gives you more confidence in what you want to do. Like you guys may have never met Maria or David or any of the numerous Georgia grads that are doing really good stuff in media right now, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about just seeing Olivia Harlan, Olivia Decker on TV and being like, oh, she was here like 5 years ago or 7 years, whatever it was, So just to see it is enough. And for me, seeing Dari, Kevin, Anish, Adnan Burke, to see these guys do the job or do a portion of the job at that level and in that platform, that at least gives me the idea, all right, maybe I have a shot to do something like this, so that I think you need to see that, and that's universal for just about anybody.
Yeah, just kind of quickly segueing in, like you talking to you and talking to Kevin, the last couple of months, you guys have been so helpful, and I looked up to you guys for so long. I looked up Shams Charnia, like all these guys that I see guys who have that similar upbringing or who have that background doing it, and it's awesome to see that representation in action. Yeah,
I think just representation in general at any level and any kind of plane of thinking seems to be more and more important. I'm understanding that more and more as I get a little bit further on in this business.
Well, I know I really respect and admire you guys because you guys tell stories about your parents maybe not being all on board or kind of doubting it and stuff like that. My parents have always been on board. And I feel like most of my doubt has come from self-doubt.
Sure.
And just kind of like being scared to really go all out and fail. So I've almost done the reverse, whereas my parents are saying, go for it. I've been the one who's like, well, maybe I really just should have been a doctor or should have been, something in finance or something like that. Sure. And not because I'm bad. I mean, I don't think I'm bad. People have told me I'm not. It's just, it seems like this business, there's a lot of high risk, high reward, and I'm a very risk averse person. So it feels good to hear, stories like you and to see Shreyas's grind and say you had opposition from the people who were closest to you and you still were able to believe in yourself and push. So it's like, I really have no excuse when my parents are in my corner and, they just want to see me succeed and be happy.
Yeah, but the other thing too, Josh, don't feel like that's not valid. I know you're not like minimizing your own issues, your own doubts or anything, but that's valid no matter what. Like even if your parents are in your corner, maybe it wasn't the same, for me or for Shreyas like as it is for you, but you have other avenues of doubt that anybody would deal with, and like I've had plenty of my own issues with self-doubt in this business. I still deal with that today. Like, there's something called imposter syndrome where you're kind of like, do I really belong doing this? Like you kind of trick yourself sometimes. And then that changes on a day-to-day basis. Like that attitude can change, at any point. Like you can suddenly feel this way on a Monday. You didn't have if I didn't have a great broadcast on Sunday, I might not feel great on Monday. I might be disappointed in myself. And then if I have a good one on Thursday, that'll carry me through the weekend and be like, all right, I'm gonna have another good one on Saturday or whatever it is. Like those feelings of doubt and confidence, like those fluctuate day to day. And I would think that's for anybody in any line of work, but in particular in a line of work that has the high risk, high reward type of atmosphere that this does, and in a high adrenaline type of job, which I think I personally get a lot of juice from calling games, fun, good atmospheres, things like that. These are high adrenaline atmospheres. If you feel like you did a good job in that, you're good. That's going to carry you for a little while. And you have to fight that sometimes. to try to stay more consistent, but it's understandable in this line of work and plenty of other lines of work, even the ones that don't have as much, maybe, as many high stress situations, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, to wrap that idea up, I loved your quote. I think if I were to put this, on a Canva for this podcast, when you said this is a marathon, not a sprint, I really love that, because you're right. There's going to be half miles where you got a calf cramp or you stub your toe or something, and it's going to feel like I'm not going to finish this 26 miles. I can't finish this half mile. Mm-hmm. But, that's a half mile, like you said, a blip on the radar out of 26. And people don't care how that half mile went if you finish the 26 strong.
Exactly. Like it matters where you're going to be. It matters where you are, obviously. It always matters. Like it's part of your own journey. But it's going to be more important to you where you're at 50, let's say, than where you are at 30. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more important, for you guys where you're at 30 than it is at 25. But like it's you're looking to evolve. Like all of this is an evolution. Steps back do not mean that it's an end of progress. It's a stoppage in progress. It's you got to, again, that's that passion that we talked about. That's important to have you drive through to continuously try to improve at the job. All of those things are part of an evolutionary process, and you're just hoping to be better the further down the line you get in this business.
So, going off that, you won College Sportscaster of the Year twice in Indiana and the finalist for the Jim Nantz Award. And then at 24, you became the youngest ESPN play-by-play broadcaster ever. How much of this did you actually see coming? Like, did you ever envision to become this good at broadcasting and play-by-play broadcasting?
Well, I mean, that's subjective, obviously, first and foremost, like where you, what that means for different people. I think that at the end of the day, that's this thing more than anything else. But objectively, like, I feel like I've done a good enough job to stay at a place for a decent amount of time. Like, I've done 9 years at ESPN, and at the very least, that tells me I'm a capable, competent, trustworthy broadcaster. So to get to that point and then try to have as many good days or great days or phenomenal broadcasts as possible, just striving for quality, like to get to that point, it takes a lot of, for me, it took a lot of repetitions to get there. I think there are a lot of people out there that are just really supernaturally talented at this. Like, and I've got plenty of buddies, male and female, that like they go on air and you hear them, you see them, the way they write stuff, the way they call games, the way they report on certain things, whatever. You just go, man, they are a natural. They sound like they were supposed to be doing this. And I don't think I'm one of those people. I think for me, it took a lot of doing it over and over again. I'm a big repetitions guy. I like doing pull-ups. Like, we're in quarantine right now. I got a pull-up bar, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like, I've learned this about myself over the years. I make gains very quickly. Like, I can get bigger. I just have the type of body I can put a lot of muscle on really fast. I also lose it very fast. I also gain fat very quickly, and I lose fat very slowly. Like, so this should tell you that quarantine has not been great for me physically. Is the overall thesis really of this entire conversation. I wanted to make sure people knew that. But I think I'm the same way as a broadcaster. I think I'm the exact same way. I think I can learn something very quickly. I think it will, but I think it'll go away quickly if I don't keep doing it over and over and over again. And I can get into bad habits fairly easily, and it takes me a while to get rid of those bad habits. And I can do it, and I'm capable of it. But part of the reason why I think I've been able to find a level of consistency is because for that 9-year period, I was doing 90 to 120 games a year. And have the opportunities to do it over and over. And even to get to ESPN, I did, 4 years of working at the student radio station where we got a ton of reps. And then maybe, going back to what you were talking about earlier, Josh, about kind of the bigger program, smaller school type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was one benefit of going to a smaller school, is we had a lot of opportunities. They didn't maybe have as much juice to them as you know, doing a game between the hedges might on your college demo tape. But you know, that being said, like, we were still able to get a decent amount of reps, and I think for me that was so important, just to get reps and keep doing it over and over again. And that's continued, you know, into the year, the couple of years that I was out of school. I did 4 years of minor league baseball between my junior year of college and by the time I got hired at ESPN. So that's you know, a couple hundred broadcasts, you know, or 150 broadcasts a year minimum, along with everything you do in the off season. So there were a lot of reps, and a lot of them since working at ESPN. And I think I've finally gotten to a point, good timing, I guess, considering that, like, we may be off for a decent amount of time. Like, you know, let's say the next broadcast I have is a college football game. That's not till September, let's say. And that's, you know, still 5 months away. So that would be like almost 6 months of not doing games, not calling play-by-play.
Yeah.
So for me, that's very strange, but I also think I've gotten to a point with all of the collective reps over the years to kind of build this foundation of you know, to be solid in that foundation of what you've learned over that amount of time. So I think now I'll be okay. But if this was 6 years ago, I'd be a little like, man, I'm gonna have to ramp back into the process of all this.
Well, you mentioned how it was bad for your physical this quarantine. I've been thinking about that a lot, because I was finally like lifting a lot, and I was like putting on some muscle, and I'm like, heck yes. And I mean, I can look into my treadmill right now. That's all I've got in this house. At my home.
Dusty is all get out right now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I can run, but I mean, the gains are gone, man.
The gains are gone. The dietary habits are different now. Like right before we got on this call, I was out for a run, and before that we were doing pull-ups and we were doing, like, you know, literal quarantine workouts, pull-ups, sit-ups, dips, push-ups. And then let me go run 2 miles and try to, you know, stay lean. And then, of course, on the way back, I bought a thing of Talenti gelato, which is a smart food. So
I'm at my parents' house. They got good food everywhere, and I just
exactly, yeah. Man, come on, that's the epicenter of the great food.
I mean, when you're at like your apartment, all I've got is Chef Boyardee, peanut butter, and fruit, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess all I've got is the calories I'm supposed to eat. But here,
you guys at least have the metabolism for it, man. I don't have that. That's long gone for me. So I'm in dire straits.
Shreyas, what do you think? What have you been working out doing with
honestly, I made my dad get like a couple more like weights, as in my time at ESPN, the only thing I did besides sleep and go to work was work out, because the self-esteem, I was the youngest one there by 5 or 6 years in the department. I didn't see anybody my age, but I got in a really good routine where I wouldn't go do anything besides workout. So I put a lot of muscle on, and I was just like burning a lot of fat. But like coming back home, it's hard to say no to mom's cooking, you know, to say no to that routine. And I like force myself to go run, and I hate running.
There's this pull-up bar.
There it is, man.
That is awesome.
I got installed yesterday.
I would show you my treadmill, but my basement is dirty, and my mom would have a fit if I showed you that room.
There's that, and then this guy, the maxi climber. It's like the knockoff. Like LeBron's got the Versa climber. That is the maxi climber, which is the far cheaper, less quality knockoff version, which still gets the job done.
Some of my teachers were saying, send it, or one of my bosses at work was like, send a meme of your quarantine, and I sent a meme of this old man like working on the computer. He had a computer set up over his treadmill. He was just walking and like typing on his computer. I feel like all I've done is walk on the treadmill and watch TV and play Batman. I've been playing the Arkham games again.
I just bought Arkham Knight.
Ooh, that's a good game.
Yesterday.
You never played it before?
No, I've beat it a couple times, and then I was like, I just really missed the game. That was a few years ago, and then I'm replaying Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, and I bought Pro Evolution Soccer.
Okay.
Let's try this
no FIFA
once in a while. I had FIFA 19, and I got upset at it at one point, and did not want to play it anymore, so I switched over.
I don't play 2K anymore. I used to play 2K like crazy, and none of my friends would play with me anymore because other than Shreyas, all my friends don't really care about basketball, so I would play it religiously. They didn't play it at all. So I remember beating my friend AJ. The last time we played, I used the Atlanta Hawks with the best player is Dennis Schroeder, and he used the LeBron Cavs, and I beat him by 55 points. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm never playing with you again." And that was 2.5 years ago.
That's cold-blooded.
No, I get it. Kind of transitioning into that, what has been your favorite event / sport to cover and call like throughout your career?
I mean, it's tough. I've been lucky, man. I've had some really crazy moments to see, just in a short amount of time. National championship games in college football.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when Georgia. I was on the Georgia sideline. Me and Aaron Murray were calling the. We're the Homer's broadcast. So there I am with like a Georgia legend. We're having a ball. The game was such a great game. And even obviously the overtime was awesome. Tough ending for Georgia, but it was that was insane to have done that the last few years. See some of the games that we've gotten a chance to see. The women's Final Four. This weekend today. In fact, today I should be calling the national semis. We should be calling the Final Four tonight in New Orleans, and obviously this is going on. So that's obviously disappointing, but. We've had some great runs in the Final Four. I've called LeBron buzzer beaters in the playoffs. I've called some major LeBron. I called a good chunk of those Cavs teams. My first few, couple of years doing the NBA. Mm-hmm. It was the LeBron Cavs that were in the conference finals the first 2 years. I called them. And it was
that's awesome.
It was great to be a part of those broadcasts. The Iron Bowl, 2013, the Kick 6 game, I was part of that.
Wow.
So, I did the national radio call of that game. So, a couple MLB playoff games. Last baseball game I called was in Atlanta or in St. Louis. Braves Cardinals. I think the Braves came back to win in the 9th in game 3. I want to say great game in that series. So. It's been awesome. It's been awesome to get a chance to do all this stuff. The NBA is probably the sport that I've grown to love doing the most. I've worked locally for the Bulls as a fill-in announcer the last couple of years, so that's been a dream come true to do like your hometown team a little bit. That's awesome. I think the NBA is probably the thing I'm enjoying the most now. The NFL is right up there. College football is right up there. There's a lot of great stuff, man.
Is there any behind-the-scenes stories with players, like famous players or famous coaches that you think would be good to share that the public might not know?
I'm trying to think of one that I can tell that isn't too like.
Won't get you in trouble.
Won't get me in too much trouble. No, I ran into Kevin Love at a Boston bar the same night that I hung out with Shaq for a little bit. Like that was cool. It was 2017. We were in Boston. It was game 2, I want to say, of that conference final series. Mm-hmm. And so we got done. We were going to have, or it was after game 1, actually. And we had an off day. So this is the most amount of time that we're going to have in between games in that series. So we went out for a really nice dinner after game 1. It was me and PJ Carlissimo, who was my TV analyst on most of the NBA games I did. That was my first year covering the league. And John Barry, who is my radio partner. We were doing the conference finals together. We went out for a nice dinner at our buddy's place in Boston. And Shaq was there. And I was like, oh, Shaq's here. Because the TNT crew was covering that conference final. Mm-hmm. So PJ goes, oh, you haven't met Shaq? Come on. So he drags me over, and John Barry played with him, and PJ was an assistant coach on a couple of teams that Shaq was around for. So they've known him forever, and Shaq he's got this big chair and on the table at the restaurant. And he daps me up and gives me a hug, and he's like, oh, you hang with these clowns, making fun of PJ and John, and it was great. Met informally. I'd met Kevin Love a handful of times at that point, just covering him. But He was close to PJ as well. Both are West Coast guys. John Barry lives in Los Angeles. Has lived in Los Angeles before. He now lives in Atlanta, but he spends a lot of time in LA. So he was buddies with Kevin Love, and we all sat down and had a drink, and it was really cool to just hang out with the guy. He won me over as a human being, and obviously since then he's proven to be one of the class human beings in the NBA. So it's just a lot of cool interactions. Being able to say hey to Jay-Z once at a Houston Rockets playoff game, meeting Common earlier this year after a Brooklyn Nets game. It's cool to be in that. Like, part of the reason the NBA is so much fun is because it makes a lot of these stars, people we might consider star entertainment, obviously stars, made them feel a lot more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a league that kind of facilitates that because they're sitting right there, and Kevin Hart is at like every Philly game. It's not uncommon to see this, and it's like, oh yeah, we're used to this. It's still kind of cool. It's still like, oh wow, they're whoever they are, but it also really makes them a lot more accessible. Like, we're just here to watch the same exact basketball game as Ben Affleck or whatever.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I know that it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to stay calm and not fanboy, because I worked for Intercom last summer and I covered Falcons training camp for a little bit, and I am a from birth Falcons fan,
Sure.
from birth, and I just don't think it'll ever change. And when I saw Julio and Matt Ryan, I was just I had to maintain my calmness. I held the camera for the interview for Austin Hooper, and I'm I just pretend I don't care. I have to pretend that this is just a day on the job. But seeing Julio in person, I was just that's him. That's one of the greatest receivers that's ever lived.
That's your guy.
5 feet from me, Julio had veins on the front of his calf. Over the bone.
He's veins on veins. He's veins on veins.
I've never seen anything.
Those guys are lean, man. But yeah, I understand that. I think I got over that fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But it definitely took being around the pro guys a little bit. I didn't start calling pro sports until 2012, and when I first started covering the NFL. So I covered my first game in the NFL. I think I actually may still have my spotting board for it. I'm actually looking. I do not. It's somewhere in the archives, I guess. So no, but I didn't start. I covered Peyton Manning in Cincinnati. I called Peyton Manning's 50th touchdown pass of the season that year, which at the time was the record before Brady broke it and then Breeze. So, I kind of was around some of these guys right out of the gate, and then called Major League Baseball starting in 2013. Was around a lot of big league guys. Started covering the NBA a few years ago. That took a little while for me to be oh man, I'm calling a game for ESPN, and it's in Chicago, and I'm in the same room as Dwayne Wade, and he's expecting the interview with me. That took a second. I was oh wow, yeah, that's Dwayne Wade, the guy I grew up, when I was a sophomore or a freshman in college. He was putting together one of the best finals performances ever, and I remember listening to the radio and listening to NBA games on ESPN radio when I first started becoming a student of broadcasting, and it was during the Dwayne Wade run in the NBA finals for Miami when he was at his best, and I had a very big affection for him as a player, and I'd always heard he was a great guy, and he couldn't have been more kind-hearted and super. Doris Burke was my partner, and she's hey, first NBA game. This is his first NBA interview. This is you. This is a big moment for you. Mm-hmm. And was joking around with Dwayne. It made me feel a little awkward because I knew that wasn't true, but it made me feel a little bit more comfortable. So I always I thought it was so cool to do that, and then you get used to it, and that's a good and a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I think the worst part of this job, one of the bad parts of this job, maybe not the worst, but one of the bad parts is it really does desensitize you to a lot of the things that made you fall in love with sports in the first place.
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks, you grew up with a little bit of whimsy about, your favorite baseball team or your favorite player on, on for me it was the Bulls. Like I work for the Bulls now. Like that blows me away. I do preseason games for the Bears. Like I grew up with these teams. I've called games at Wrigley Field. Like I have this photo of or this collage here of some of my favorite just picks, and it's like that's the Iron Bowl, and I have the media pass for that game. I have that's the first NBA game I ever called, and it's me and Doris sitting courtside in Chicago. That's the women's Final Four after Enrique Ogunbowale makes the shot. That's my first NBA playoff game. We're standing with Steph Curry. Like, I want, there's a shot of my first game at Wrigley. Like, I wanted these moments, to be important to me, and they were. And a lot of it was because I was kind of a little starstruck or just awestruck in general by being able to do some of these things. Then eventually you just get to a point where you've maybe done it enough, or you also have the understanding of what it takes to do the job properly in an atmosphere and an arena like that. Like, I've had to learn how to slow myself down. My first couple of NBA playoff games I called on the radio, I was like on fire. I was like over the top energetic. I was maybe too into it and not calm enough, and I wasn't doing my job at that point. And once you get used to some of these situations, it gets easier and easier.
I have a cool story. You talked about calling the shot for Enrique Ogunbowale. I hope I didn't say that wrong. One of the coolest moments.
No, you nailed it. You nailed it.
Sweet. One of the coolest things, and one of the biggest, like, I guess, feeling like I'm maybe going to make it one day moments was when I was interning for the Dream, and they were playing the Dallas Wings, and I rebounded. She was the last person to leave the court.
Oh, no kid.
Yeah, and I rebounded. It was just me rebounding for her. And
That's so cool.
I'm like, that's the girl that hit one of the most famous shots in the history of women's basketball. Yeah. And it's crazy because you're right. It does humanize them a lot. And I think that's good for your mind to see that these are just people. So, like, treat them like people. Because she was shorter than me and one of the best players in college basketball history. Yep. Maybe one day in the WNBA. That was just every time anyone says her name, I was like, I remember when I rebounded for her, it was just me and her.
That's awesome.
And I had to pretend I didn't care. I didn't care,
Yeah, try to stay calm for the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What you got next, Shreyas? I just wanted to share that.
No worries. So you've done a lot of different sports and got to do, some of your hometown teams. What's next for you as a broadcaster, as a sports media figure overall?
Yeah, it's tough right now. It's a weird time to suddenly stop working. This was the time of year that you want to be working. It's March Madness. Like I said, this would be the Final Four weekend. The NBA playoffs would be around the corner. Major League Baseball would be starting up. This would be, one of my favorite times of the year. This is also not it's also a time to kind of recognize, like, here what I've come to realize too in these last few weeks, like how non-essential, like, we actually are in a lot of ways. Like, you get a sobering reality, and I use the word sobering because, listen, I'm well aware we live in Candyland. Like, we get to live in the sandbox of life, so to speak. Where we get to enjoy this part of the business. And that's why so many people want to be a part of it. Why so many people want to have a job in it. It's because it's fun. But you also come to the sobering realization that there is a lot of there is a lot of non-essential to this industry and to sports in a lot of ways. You come to realize that. You also come to realize how important sports really are to the national conversation, to the culture, and to the normalization of a luxury item. Like, sports, I think what we've realized is kind of a luxury item, but it's something that everybody could enjoy. It was a luxury item that everybody could enjoy, and that's why it's so strange to not have all of that connecting a good chunk of the population right now. So it's you come to realize that that gives you a little bit of perspective. That's as much perspective as I would expect anybody to have. I expect that from myself. I would expect that at the least from most people. In the micro, that's the macro of it. In the micro of it all, it's strange. It's a little weird, but I keep reminding myself the same thing I told you guys, and it's probably the perfect place to put a bow on all this. Is again, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's the same advice I gave to you, and it's the same advice I'm trying to follow myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same advice I'd give to just about anybody. Like your hope is that this is part of a marathon, not a sprint. I know there are a lot of other people worse off than I am. There's people who are suffering from this, people who are dying from this. Like they don't have the time clock that I may have.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that, and I have that perspective as well. But if I can think in the grandest scheme of things, you keep reminding yourself that this too will pass. You've done enough work. You've put in enough work to make sure that you'll have some semblance of a career, when sports pick up again. But it also makes you very appreciative for all this too. Like that's the other thing. Like I'm very appreciative that I have had the job that I've had, whether I have it, for much longer, who knows? But I'm appreciative of the fact that I've been able to do all the things that we've talked about so far.
Man, I know we had one more question, but I wish that we could just take everything you just said and end on that. When we edit Quinn, we might put that at the end. But one more thing, I would guess if you could pick one event you wanted to do that you haven't done, would it be the Super Bowl? Would it be I can't remember if you said you did the actual finals. You may have just done conference finals. If there was one event you could pick that you haven't done yet, what's that next step, next goal for you?
It's tough to think about those, think about it in those terms, because you try to just keep maintaining some level of process over a result.
Mm-hmm.
If I did have to boil it down, I'd love to get, an opportunity someday to call, an NBA Finals or a World Series,
Mm-hmm.
at some point down the line. I think it'd be great to have that chance. A Game 7 always has this kind of dramatic feel to it. I've called I think 4 or 5 of them in my career, which anytime you get a Game 7, it's just awesome. And I've had them in the conference finals. I've never done the NBA finals, but I'd love to get that chance someday. And down the line, a Game 7 would be awesome in a final series.
So Adam, we're starting a new segment. It's called basically Mouth Off Corner. So it's 45 seconds to talk about whatever you want, whether it's to push something you're passionate about, something you're pissed off about, whatever you want. You got 45 seconds. The floor is yours. Talk away.
Man, I didn't know I was going to get the opportunity to do this, but no, I would, I would go back to just kind of emphasize what we talked about. Thanks. I'd emphasize what we talked about earlier. This is, it's a great gig. Part of the reason everybody, wants to do it is because it is as fun as it is. I hope that passion continues to drive you, even in times like this. This sucks. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants to have to deal with stuff like this. We'd certainly rather be in a position where we get to enjoy the luxuries that we've been afforded, and get to do jobs in those same, avenues, and get to enjoy the fun of all of it. So I do believe that at some point we'll get back to it. We'll have that opportunity again. Don't lose faith this early into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys will be all right.
Okay.
On the money. You can tell he's a sportscaster. Listen to that producer, because he was on the money with that one.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it. I love that.
All right, one more thing. Our producer really wants to see you do a pull-up. Will you do a pull-up for us?
I don't know if I mean, yes. This is the weirdest.
You can hold the camera. One arm.
I don't think I can do a one-arm pull-up if that's for a gun.
We'll just trust you. We'll just, there you go.
Let's see if this
Perfect.
works. Is that there?
Yep.
All right.
That's good form. He didn't jump at all.
No, that was full extension. Feet on the ground, reach up, and have to go all the way up. So,
well, we're not worried about your broadcasting or your fitness levels, Mr. Adam. You are tip top shape in both of them.
I guess if that's tip top shape, we got. I guess I can give up now and just eat that gelato for the rest of the afternoon.
Well, I'm happy with it. Anything else you got, Shreyas? I'm good. This has been great.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on. I know I kind of shot my shot, but I'm so happy you did. I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much.
Man. great conversation, and hopefully we'll do it again down the line, right?
Yeah.
All right. Heck yeah.